Say we don't come together, and we're here all the time. We don't take it on board, but know that if Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X were alive today, as much as we like the rhetoric, nobody would be any more convinced by their machinations. It sounds nice, but the vast majority of us are so indoctrinated that we're very sick. And there is a cabal of maybe 15 to 20% who are very active. And you see the same people in the same places, only because of the digital era, we're not separated by any one degree. And that's internationally. We are internationally connected like we've never been at any time in history. And the truth is we're blessed. So tonight is about taking personal responsibility for our politics, not the politics of Downing Street, but the politics of our own communities. And the way that Garvey took Harlem during the Depression and enabled 1,000 people to have employment when Europeans were throwing themselves off roofs because the stock market crashed. It's coming again. It's coming here. And you'll see it a lot quicker in the States. So this is our opportunity to prepare. And this is the term we've been banding around, that's Blacksit. It's about separation. It's about separation based on taxation, because we can donate all of our taxable income to our charitable entities and to our trusts. That's a self-sustaining ecosystem. When we do that, we're free. And trusts lie outside of UK legislation. In fact, they lie outside of all national legislations. So we make our trusts international in nature. So when you look at an ADPAC, which is an Israeli lobbying committee, we can do exactly the same. And then it's just plugging in state by African state, which is modular. When we start to think modular and scalable, we become dangerous, because you have to start from where you are. And we always have these grandiose plans. And everybody talks in a very romantic way about Garvey and where he was before the FBI and this transvestite Hoover took him down. Where he was a culmination of many relationships and many years' work. Do we ask if it was a year? Do we ask if it was a decade to come to the space where he employed 1,000 people? No, we don't. But what we do know in the lessons from that is that we can't have figureheads anymore, because figureheads get cut off. And this is why we need the institutions. And while we prep those institutions, we create succession plans. So just like every society is looking at those with potential to groom, we've got to be looking at those with potential to groom and have our own societies. So we groom them for politics, we groom them for economics, we groom them for media ownership. And then when you look in a decade's time, where there are powerful cabals of us, you know why? It's not by mistake. It's by the machinations of many backrooms, a lot of grooming, scholarships, placing people in positions. This is an ecosystem, because nothing works in isolation. Nature is what we follow, because we're natural people. Trees feed us oxygen. We feed trees back carbon dioxide. This is a natural ecosystem. So everything we do from this point must be based on an ecosystem that is functional. When we're in that functional ecosystem, it's kinetic, like the battery, where one feeds one. We feed our businesses reinvest their taxation in our entities, our children and our families experience them, and it's kinetic. We aren't friends, let's be honest with each other, with people for no reason. Why would you be friends with somebody because you knew their last name? It's functional. Friends rely on friends. Ecosystems rely on each other. And that's what we need today. And that's what we're doing today. There are brotherhoods that are involved in the creation of things right now that would sound very mercenary to most of us, but they have a clarity that 99% of us don't. And there are things being financed and incorporated now that are going to represent us over the course of whatever this fallout is from Europeans playing with fiat currencies, where we're not going to be touched by them, or those who choose not to be touched by them, because there'll be a hell of a lot of us who will fight to fix a system that isn't broken. That system is a system of white supremacy as we know it. Now, it doesn't matter how much money you have as an individual, that's an individual success. Your children are still going to be in state schools, still largely taught by European women that can be expelled or put into proofs for the infraction of having the wrong hairstyle. So we don't see that as a reason to punish our children. It's our obligation to uphold, promote, and preserve our culture. So when we understand that, we do it. And by doing this frequently, and by sharing these messages with the many, and it's not going to be a thing of the sky turning lilac overnight and everybody jumping on board, because they won't. But what will happen is by drip feeding constantly by our own media from many different directions, you'll see that people start to come on side. So first of all, we'll celebrate Americans because it's not real. You see, for me, celebrating Americans and what they do and say, oh, we'll do that here. No, we wouldn't. You want an example? If you have a man, you win £1 million in the lottery, Bridget, you know if I win this thing, I give you half. Yeah, I got half a million. So well done, Bridget. If you win $500,000, would you give me a quarter? Come on, kid. You know me. So if you win 100 grand, you give me 50 quid. Tomorrow. How much you got in your wallet? Whoa. That's different. Okay. And that's what America is for us. It's like a fantasy that's not obtainable. We can't touch it. We can't see it, we can't feel it, we don't really believe it. But it sounds nice. So when it's here, it's a little bit like violence that you see in a movie. We love it, don't we? But have you ever seen anybody stabbed in real life? It's horrible. Have you ever seen anybody shot with their jaw hanging off? It's horrible. When somebody do the death shake in your arms, it's horrible. It's not romantic. It's not cute, but it looks nice on camera. This room isn't the camera. This is real life. So everybody here is at least committed to some form of change. A change that is, it has to be functional. So first of all, we got to master it in our own life before we can package and sell it to anybody else. If we don't believe in this educational system, we personally got to take our children out. But who wants to homeschool? Not even I want to homeschool. 4 years in. So what we want are the institutions that are going to represent us. And that's only going to be done with mass adoption. And for mass adoption, we've got to make it attractive to everybody. So that is coordinating all of our own media entities, radio, print, TV, online. And online and TV have merged into one thing. We don't need licenses for any of this stuff anymore because tech has taken over. And anybody wasting time with FM radio stations or anything else, that's what apps are for. One place we can compete is technologically, because it levels the playing field. It completely democratizes it. There's no limitation that our young people can be held back with technology. This brother here, Leon, one of the hardest working young men I've ever seen. And I've seen him in Hyde Park at 10 a.m. before anybody's there to start filming at Speaker's Corner, decided himself to incorporate his own TV network. And whether he knows it or not, we have a colleague in Tandem, John Cannon, who goes to all of the meetings to coordinate Hyde Park. And the bodies that be actually want him to be the official videographer. So I may even just be breaking that now. But now I'm going to break something else to Leon from Content of Everything as well. They know that people speak very freely and nakedly to Leon. And all they got to do is go look on our network to find out all the information. So what you just learned very quickly is we have a great responsibility as media owners to protect our own. We have to think about everything that we're doing in as sophisticated a way as them. And those rooms are cold, clinical logic. I was in a room like this with brothers on Monday in Manchester. It was cold, clinical logic and reason. And we were talking about things that we don't talk to lay people about. And these things are happening. And these things are being funded. And there is an ilk of person in our community that we don't envisage because we don't see them every day. Because this isn't the place for them to speak. We have our own rooms of counsel. And these things are happening right now. The key for us, every single one of us, is to share the information, because then we become propagandists in all of this. So we see it as a nefarious term, as used by Europeans. But no, it's not. You want to see propaganda? This country is bankrupt. The United States and most of these European-run, fiat currency-backed countries are bankrupt. But you see them, they look shiny and they're beautiful. It's like a beautiful blonde woman dancing in a red dress with dirty underwear. But you will never know, because you won't get that close. So, once you realize that, then you see this is the power of positive propaganda. Now you know the difference, because you see what we allow to happen with us. Negative propaganda. Africa, suffering, famine, debt, disease. But go and take a holiday and see your friends in the Gambia who are property owners, who don't want to come back here more than 4 months of the year because it's cold. And they're not struggling. And the tourists are supporting them. Go to Ghana, where me and my colleagues had discussions, and it's crazy when you think about young men who have, we would call unofficial chemists, who have a fantastic income, who don't change up their lives like the Kennedys did. And do you know how much it costs to open a local bank in Ghana? I think it's millions, right? 5 million, 10 million, 2 million, 200,000 US dollars. And immediately you have a bank, you can loan 10 times what you have in reserve. If you decided it was going to be a development bank, you from the outside as returnees, dealing with governments, creating these contracts between the West, how you're supposed to, you pay Germans to come in, create superstructures and go home. And you pay them at the rate they're supposed to. Because what the Chinese do is first they come in with an irresistible proposition. Anything that's unrealistic is always irresistible to a fool. Where they come to swap their magic beans for African cows. And we're susceptible, so we do it. And we take it. Only then they're contractors. And their contractors are coming to stay. And they're also going to play while they're there. But Chinese aren't like Germans. Their building work isn't of the same quality. It's not sustainable. And it's expensive because then they run over. Oh my God, now the budget goes up. Now the terms of the loan change. You know what you do? In a time of knowledge, we find those who are the most effective builders, and we employ them. So when German superstructures go up in a week, why don't we just pay people? And if you have a bank and it's a development bank, own the debt. This is the smart way of doing things. This is the way everybody else does things. Now you have the real bigger question that people ask of all politicians. Do you think it's all right to pay them? We're all big people in this room. Pay them. Because if you don't, Europeans will. Chinese will. This thing of your spirit and not feeling right, when you go in a room with big people, and big people are working, they get paid. And if they don't get paid enough by the government, they're going to become very entrepreneurial in their role. Like when some of you have traveled and found that with police, they become entrepreneurial in some countries. However, you know, by pulling something out of your pocket and paying can be a very expedient conversation, and you're on your way. So we have to advance how we think and move into how the world actually works, because we haven't. Number one, our distant cousins, white mummy and daddy, have been the saviors we're looking for. Just to give everybody in this room clarity about our position. I'm going to say this very quickly before I introduce our first guest speaker, performer. In 2015, we're all aware that our kidnappers' families were paid reparations for the stock they lost. Now imagine, we were left in the Caribbean doing fine, and they invited us over here to fix the motherland. And then what did they do when we came and we went? They taxed us, right? And you know where that taxation went? Reparations has gone down like chicken, just not for us. That reparations that went down like chicken went to them. And they've now been recompensed 4 years ago. So what we are surplus to requirement. Have clarity about that. And that is why the 6 private prisons that have been built are going to have employees that look like our children. Have clarity about that. We have outlived our usefulness. So now if that doesn't scare anybody, if you find in your child in a pru who's highly intelligent and polite, don't worry what you think these people won't do, because the cameras are watching. We're not going to be in Europe anymore. And all your rights came from Europe. Your 40-hour week came from Europe. It's less than 100 years ago that 7-year-olds were chimney sweeps and suffering from lung diseases and dying before 10. Have clarity about this barren little island and their own. All of these machinations were worked out long before they kidnapped us. The Scottish, the Irish, and the Welsh. And that's why English people are despised in all of those places. But you see, money speaks louder than anything else, so they become accepted again. Understand our state in the union. But brothers and sisters, if we can have a hand for Tony Dada and his band, they're going to be performing.
Wow, how do you follow that? I'm sitting there, I don't know about you, but I just learned a whole load of stuff today already. I'm like, give me a moment, brother, I just want to take some in. So, how do you follow that? Well, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and just do a little something for you. I was speaking to Iola, and she said, you know, we were talking about perhaps bringing a different kind of flavour, just to change the vibe and change the energy. Now, for some of you who know me as Tony Dada, the GPS mentor coach, that's really my background. So for the last 27 years, I've been investing in our community. For 20 years, working with our young people, those that society had given up on and said were disadvantaged and couldn't do anything. And, how many people subscribe to that? How many people believe that our young people are disadvantaged and can't? Yeah. It's not true. And I found that for myself working with some of our young people. Using creativity and visioning and taking personal responsibility, we can be anything. We can achieve anything. And this is something that we've done through our organisation. So when Iola invited me, gave me the opportunity to come and do something with you, I thought, why not? So I'm going to invite my sister, Kalila. Kalila, so you may not know me in a singing capacity, but as I said, creativity is my God-given gift. And so I use that in all of my work. I refer to myself as a creative social entrepreneur. We all have that gift of creativity, and it's about understanding what our gifts are and how we use them. My brother spoke earlier on about taking personal responsibility. For me, when I sit here today, I'm in a state of bliss. Why? Because 35 years ago, I was living in South London, and it was like a war zone for me, particularly because, and I see my brother there from school, so he knows what I'm about to say. There was a disconnect, unfortunately, in terms of, certainly as I'm a Nigerian, and there was just a war between Nigerians and West Indians in my world. And my sister's shaking her head, she can relate to that. And I wrote a song, and hopefully later on I'll get a chance to do it. But it was a soul cry that, even as a young teenager, I was like, why can't we wake up to the truth about who we really are and come together? But you know what? The beauty for me today is, here I am, a Nigerian, with a sister from Jamaica, or from the Caribbean, and we're going to do a song together. And for me, that speaks about progress. That speaks about us getting to a point of realizing that we have to wake up and recognize who and what we truly are. So with your permission, we're just going to do a little something for you. Is that all right?
Yes.
And if you feel the vibe, you can tap your hand. We want to change the energy. We want to change the vibe in the place today. Is that all right? Sorry, let's try again. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, sister, always let the lady lead the way. Oh, pirates, yes, they were by. Sold I to the merchant ship. They took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. If you know the song, won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None of ourselves can take our time. I've no faith in atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long will they till our profits while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing? I can't hear these songs of freedom, 'cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Can't hear, 'cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None of them can stop our time. Have no fear in atomic energy. None of them can stop the time. How long will they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever get, that's better, redemption songs again. 'Cause all I ever get, redemption songs again. 'Cause all I ever get, redemption songs. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Thank you.
Dean, our next speaker, Rodney Grant. Yes. Can we give a big round of applause to Rodney?
Greetings, family.
Greetings, family.
Greetings.
Bless.
Wow, I'm humbled. First of all, I'm happy to be here. I'm inspired by everything that's just happened today. On the flyer today, I think that it was mentioned some of my credentials and some of the various things that I've done. And I'll be honest with you, I just want to start with a baseline as to why I'm here and what gives me purpose politically. So, the first person I have to actually mention is my grandmother from St. Vincent. She was pregnant at 14 and got kicked out. She, having had an education up until the age of 8 years old, she was on the street and had to manage by herself and became a market person in St. Vincent. Her goal, after having 4 children with no help, and after having her final child, who was a daughter, was to ensure that all the negative consequences that she'd seen in her life of women who'd been inflicted with pain and suffering would not happen to her daughter. And so, at that time, in the 1950s, there was a lady by the name of Mrs. Laborde, who was actually the aunt of a person many of us may know or have heard of Mr. Eric Williams, who was the first Premier of Trinidad. And she was an educator, however, she only was an educator for people who were of a certain hue. And my grandmother, being a blue-black, robust lady, went to Mrs. Laborde and said, "Mrs. Laborde, please can you educate my daughter with her basket on her head?" And Mrs. Laborde agreed because my grandmother had the gall to ask her. My mother was the person who was that child, who was the first person in our family to complete secondary school education. And since then she became a teacher and she became a registered nurse and came over to the UK. Most of my experience in the UK living here has been in Haringey, in Tottenham. And to ensure that I wouldn't be by the wayside of many of my peers, my mum used to take me to, if anyone remembers Head Start, the bookstore on West Green Road? Yeah, okay, my mum used to take me there every week, right? My mother had to raise me by herself whilst going to work in West London for a feminist organisation, experiencing racism every day, but again, did that to ensure that I was looked after. We are the ones who actually created the library in our primary school in Tottenham. We were the ones that actually took books from West Green Road to take to our school in primary school in Tottenham, which is actually the Green School in primary school, it's still there on Broad Lane, to inform my peers about our history because the school weren't going to do it. I only mention all of that because regardless of title, experience, etc., Those are the things that formulate me today, and on the basis of Sankofa, I have to give thanks to my elders. Steve Biko said many things, and one of the things I remember for today is he stated that a community is easily divided if their perception of the same thing is different. I mention that because in this country, what often gets touted as the most tolerant country within the European Union, for many reasons, doesn't necessarily describe the reality that we face today as African and Caribbean people. So I just want to touch on some of that reality that, so that we could have a clear foundation as to where we are today. So we have a population in the UK overall of about 67 million people. Of that, there's 1.9 million African Caribbean people. Of that 1.9 million African Caribbean people, we have about 1.85 million who are living in urban environments. Of those people who are living in urban environments, most of us are living in the most impoverished, overcrowded environment, where there's a statistic where it states that black people on the whole are living in overcrowded environments 3 times more than their white counterpart. When it comes to the areas that we live in, many of us actually, and I'll probably do a survey after to find out who lives in East and South London, or some East and South areas of where they live. Because those areas are actually the poorest areas of any vicinity you'd have in the UK. Why? Because in the Industrial Revolution, they had to think of where they were going to put the factories and think where the smoke from those trade winds were going to take all the carbon monoxide and noxious fumes, and so they weren't going to build those in the east sides of any kind of constituency. They were going to build them in the south and in the east. And oftentimes many of us live in the south and the east of wherever we are. When it comes to education, so we've had a recent change in grades, right, in terms of going from A, B, A to C's, and now it's a grade 9 to, I think, U. It's U1 now, isn't it? Okay. So I think on a recent stat, considering that, education is something that's really been formidable and pushed in our culture, after, let's say, 12 years of education, I think the statistic now is that we have less than 38% of our young people coming out with a grade 5 in maths and English. After 12 years. We also, unfortunately, have a 3 times more likely, if not more than that, exclusion rate compared to our white counterparts. And something Brother Dean mentioned about our PRUs and our people referral units, when we're looking at our borough statistics, they don't get included in the Ofsted reports of whether it's good or outstanding or satisfactory. Why? Because they're outside of that agenda. So you don't know how many people or how many of our young people are actually being educated within the PRU and what their standards are, because they're not included in the stats. And we know we're overrepresented there. We also know that from the many amount of our young people who are within our PRUs, that's a direct pipeline into the prison system. Let's say we don't go there. Let's say we have a child who survives the educational system and then completes their A-levels. Compared to their white counterparts, if they manage to complete their A-levels, their salary is going to be at least 17.3 times less than their white counterpart. Let's say they go further, say, oh no, I don't want to just stay on my A-levels, I want to go to university, right? Okay. Well, unfortunately, the ironic thing is that the wage gap is worse. It's 23.1% less than their white counterpart for the same degree. Okay? When we're looking at our mortality rates within the areas that we live in, unfortunately, we have African women who, in some cases, are deemed to be 7 times more likely to have a higher mortality rate than our white counterparts, and 3 times more likely to be incarcerated within a mental health institution. Okay, these are just facts. You could check it on your what you call your ONS, your Office for National Statistics. You could check it on the government website. That's where we are today. So I just put that as a point of clarity before we have a discussion about whether or not we're living in a tolerant society. Because at the end of the day, I think that something, if we're experiencing this and we call this tolerant, I think, to say it politely, they have a damn nerve. Okay? In fact, if you look at the history of our people in this country and our contributions, whether here and abroad, I think we're the ones who have tolerated the abuse rather than the country tolerating our presence. The fact that you say you tolerate me being here doesn't mean that you accept me being here. Because you tolerate my presence, and I'm supposed to feel good about that. Yeah. So, politics, and it was interesting. I was having a discussion earlier with one of our peers. Politics has to be something that is framed for our purposes. And it's very interesting when you see the various definitions of politics, because you then get to see definitions that talk about, the academic studies of government and organizations. Then you go into another field and say, well, politics is a study of political life, which is a circular definition. And I think the only definition that I thought that would be useful for today's discussion was that politics reflects the principles of a people or group that's related to power and status.
Jeez. Say that again.
Politics reflects the principles of a group that are related to power and status.
Jeez.
Okay?
Right.
So, if what we're doing in our principles is not related to power and status, I think we need a little bit of a dress back. Yeah? Now, the reason why I also mentioned, some of the statistics before, and because, mentioned about the tolerant society is, again, just about the way that we've been programmed to even think about politics. Because oftentimes we think, we've been taught that politics is something that we get involved in every 4 to 5 years. We go to a ballot box, or we have what you call it, the electronic voting. We choose a member, and then, it's done, right? That's our political life, that's it. And then many people say, well, I don't want to be involved in politics because what's the point, and what do they do? What does that do for me? And if that's the way that politics is run in your life, then I think you're right. Because politics should never be about delegating your individual freedom to take action that will improve your power and status. It's not about that. The fact that we have a system where we delegate our rights to local members who represent a constituency is the icing on the cake of what our political involvement and what our political life should be. Whether you ascribe to voting or not, it should be something that's nuanced and something that's reflected upon your principles. Many of us, let's be honest, whenever, even some of the section that do vote, how many of those people actually vote based upon the information that they've gained from their party manifesto and reading it and looking at, thinking about my own principles for my family and my community, where those things align or those things do not. Because let's be honest, many of us either vote based upon our own self-definitions of what we think our class is, whether we think we're working class or whether we think we're elitist, whether we think we're up and coming, and we're very tribalistic in our voting, but not adding the intelligence in our voting. Because we think, I'm going to vote for that party because, my family's always done that. They represent us, right? Because they talk about our people, right? Yeah, you haven't read the manifesto. So you may be voting for a party that hasn't mentioned anything about yourself and your community, and if you're aspiring to try and get a scholarship for maybe your child to escape the situation, they may have in that manifesto to say, we're going to scrap that because that's not part of our party line. Or furthermore, you may think that, I'm a hard-working man, I've worked, or lady, I've worked all the time, I've set up my own business, I've hired some people. Yeah, but that part describes me. yet that same party is going to put increased business taxes. Okay. Yet at the same time, you might be quite nationalistic in your perspective. You know, so you may think that the parties are really down for, you know, British core values or African core values or what have you. I haven't seen a party down for African core values anyway. That's another conversation. Yet there's a soft touch on immigration. So without applying the intelligence to what we're doing, then we're just left as kind of like chafing the wind, to be quite honest. The reason why I mention my history is because, as entitled in my presentation, I take politics personally. So for me, politics is about whatever I need to do to ensure my family and my community enhances their power and their status. That could mean voting. It would definitely mean finding out who my local councillor is. It will 100% mean that. Because the thing is, many of us don't realise that, okay, you have your MPs who are representing your constituency. However, in your locality, many of the decisions that are made based on your council tax, based on your business rates, based on whether or not they're going to knock down that youth centre or not, whether or not they're going to add public housing or not, whether or not they're actually going to think of how are we going to divide the budget so that our community is best served. You need to speak to your councillor and who you know who your councillor is, because they're involved in those conversations. Many of us don't know who that is. Many of us actually, when we have the general elections, you normally have the council elections that sometimes run alongside. We say, okay, yeah, I'm this party, tick. Oh, who are the councillors for that party? Tick, tick, tick. And that's, again, what we do. So, if we are thinking again about how we are going to move forward, I suggest, and I say that including myself, that we have to take an audit and we have to take an account of our principles and actions which define ourselves as a community. Because the thing is, we're supposed to have disagreements and have different perspectives and different understandings, because that's what creates the tapestry of life. We are supposed to have diversity within our unity. At the same time, we have the unity which forms our strength, and that's how we move forward. My personal politics ultimately come back to identity and culture. And when I mean culture, I don't think about the objective, aspects about the celebrations and your festivals. No, I talk about how do you live your life and what's important to you. So for me, knowing that I have a child in school that has the various lower ratings which are deemed acceptable by the school standards, but I know for my child's life with the African Caribbean context, no way are they going to be successful. That's principle for me to go to a PTA meeting. And I know many of us have pressures financially and otherwise, time pressures and otherwise, but at the end of the day, the principle has to be high. The principle that we're going to ensure that if a teacher is teaching a subject that doesn't align with my core values, they're going to know about it because I'm going to represent my child. Or let's talk about when you have the school governors meetings where they talk about exclusions of our children. We could talk about the rates of exclusion, but how many of us are school governors? Thank you. Give thanks. We need more. We need much more, but I'm glad that this lady's a school governor. Give her a round of applause, please. We've got two. Okay, we've got two, sorry. I'm so excited. And we've got three. Okay, hi. Specsavers, help me. The fact is, we need more, yeah? But there might even be a discussion, like Brother Dean said, where we may even have to think about taking our children out of the educational system altogether. And how many of us are prepared for that? Not just individually, but collectively, and seeking support for that. For me, again, personally, political life is about taking issue with the things that affect you based on the principles, such as if I'm on my estate and I see a fly tipper, okay, well, I'm going to find out how we as a community can get together and ensure that, okay, this person doesn't do this again. Why? Because it's important for me. And I think, again, we have to examine what is important for us. Because with the statistics and with the position that we are as a community, if we are to ensure the legacy of our children, this cannot stand. And to be really honest, we are the generation to move forward with that, because our children will be looking at us, and the children will have a right to look at us and say they are going to hold us to account. Okay? One of the things I think that we also need to do is start reframing our discussions in terms of the words that we use, and not just accept words and classifications as if they're gospel. And I'll explain a little bit about that. I'm gonna kind of talk about some family business as well. My wife's in the background, so I'm kind of asking permission if I can. Yeah, I'm asking. She's smiling, so I'm assuming it's okay. Okay, cool. So yeah, real sweet. Don't know if I'm gonna get food or anything. So. Like, you know, sometimes you look on TV and, you know, I get a bit licorice and I kind of say, yeah, I'm going to go to Europe. And then I say, okay, well, yeah, let me go to a country like Slovenia. And then I look at one of these programs and they say, well, okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, but I need that one. Thank you. So I go to Slovenia, and on the programs they say, yeah, this is perfect, you know, great scenery, fantastic apartments, great customer service, you go down, great family life, and I get happy. And then I remember that I'm from the Caribbean, right? African like descent, right? So then what I then do, I go to YouTube and try and find a black person who's gone to Slovenia, and then they'll say, don't come here! It's a risk to your health. And that's what I mean, because you know, much of the discussion that we have, or much of the kind of words that get touted to us in the terms, they're not really for us, they're aimed at us, you know. That's right. So you know, I won't say who, but I, you know, something quite prominent. I saw a term recently, and I was a bit, yeah, I had problems with it, to be honest. And it was something called, I saw something called toxic racism. I have no idea what that means, because racism in itself is toxic. So I think the discussion that this person had was really talking about, you know, Brexit and the fact that, you know, they're more far-right attacks, etc. So that's a toxic aspect of racism. And I kind of looked at it and I just thought, I really don't give a damn, because really racism is toxic in itself. And whether someone's trying to lick me in my head, whether someone's trying to stab me in my back nicely, they still want me dead, right? So again, it's a case of, we don't need to necessarily jump on the bandwagon, but we have to hold firm in terms of how we define things for ourselves. One of the best things when it comes to racism, I don't have any discussion about racism unless it's talking about a systematic institutional process, because that's what it is. It's not about whether or not someone likes you, whether or not someone socially integrates with you, whether or not you can eat tea sometimes and you have friends with people. It's not an individual thing. It's a systematic institutional thing. And it's interesting how many different reports we're seeing from Scarman to Lamy that's mentioning so many different aspects of institutionalized racism, from the police to the criminal justice system to the educational system, the NHS. Oh, there you go. Okay, right? Yet we still get into these conversations where, you know, if someone from, you know, our hue and our background says something about anyone else, I hear, not in this room, oh, why are you being racist? Well, I can't be. And the thing is, I stand firm to that, and you know, people are supposed to disagree with you because you are there representing your perspective, and that is what being political is. You have to stand firm on your perspective. Okay? So the point of standing firm on your perspective is the point to push the argument and push the dialectic, because people are supposed to give you that inertia and feedback, and it's their choice whether or not they are going to move based upon your opinion or not. Okay. We need to be standing firm to what we hold core, what we hold true, and push the argument, because this is who we are. And again, like I mentioned, my grandmother, my mother, only because I have a clear understanding that for there to be a legacy, there has to be a legend.
Oh my God.
So we have to be prepared to create the legends for our children and our children's children and our children's children, because there won't be a legacy after that. And that's the truth. And the thing is about that is that legends are not easy to build. And they're generational, and they're sacrificial, but they're consistent. And you have those stories from generation to generation to generation that prove that what we do and what we did was worth it, because they have a better future. With that, I'd like to thank you for hearing me. So,
but you know, and it just speaks about the soul, the spirit that we have. You know, growing up as a teenager in this country, I was always on the sound system because my soul connects. Do you understand? There's an overstanding, a connection. And this is really why I'm excited about the times that we're living in. That we've risen up above just the physical and recognizing the spiritual nature that we possess. And when we come to that place, then it's a different conversation. I had a blessed scenario 35 years ago where I met someone who became my spiritual mentor, and he still is my spiritual mentor today, and he's from Africa. And he gave me an education far beyond anything that I could ever have attained. Yes, I got a degree from this country, and I appreciate that, but my real lessons of how to navigate this thing called life came from someone who came from a supposed third world country. Are you feeling me? So it's about us recognizing what time this is, and it's about us waking up to the realities of who we are and taking personal responsibility for who we are and how we want to show up in the world. And so I just want to do one last song, if that's all right with you.
Yes.
Wake up. Okay. And so, yeah, you can tap your hands because you might not know this song. It's an old song. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed. No more backward thinking. Time for looking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There is so much hatred, war and poverty. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. And maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. 'Cause they're the ones who's coming up, and the world is in their hands. So when you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. Because the world won't get no better if we just let it be. No, no, no. The world won't get no better. Gotta change it, yes. You and me. You and me. You and me. We gotta change it, yes. You and me. Thank you very much. A round of applause for my sister. Thank you very much, everyone. Hope you enjoy the rest of the evening.
You have people, as I said of his wife when she spoke here in December, as superheroes. You can't see their cape, but they do it every day, consistently, in work within their role, where we get information from them and know exactly what is going on behind the scenes, where their families are functional, where their children are catered for educationally as they're supposed to, where they understand what a cultural legacy is. I said something earlier, we're all responsible to culturally represent ourselves, to promote, preserve, and keep who we are. Because without it, we're nothing. If you want to see what we are without culture, look in the animal factory outside. So whatever they want to do with us, whatever the new term is, it was BME, Black Minority Ethnic. Then Asian, today, we are brothers. Yeah. I come you my brother around this money. Let go dance. The only let we focus on today's beat. In B.
Come on.
And the B doesn't actually mean anything. Because black means something while you're in the shower and you're listening to the song. We're proud to be black. But it doesn't mean nothing. Because you're not actually a nation. So when they say Asian, and you go to Sodol, they are a nation. And do you know how you know people are a nation? Because my brother Rodney said something very important. We're very tolerant. So they say, you're homophobic. Oh my good God. How can I be homophobic? I live in Brixton. And there's the fridge. And it's one of the biggest gay clubs on a Saturday night. Nobody got beat up. And gentlemen were practicing their proclivities on back streets. And I have seen them when I'm going home and I haven't attacked anybody. And our home is their playground and their dustbin. Because you can see the condoms, you can see the used drug paraphernalia, because they come to play, where there's poppers to relax their mindset, or foil because they're chasing the dragon. So we're the most tolerant people on earth. But it's because we have no collective politic. You see, we are indoctrinated to be very malleable. Because you know why we're here? To serve. We were educated and groomed to serve like children. So the religion is beautiful. Come to me as a child. Okay. You need 10%? No problem. You got a Lexus, I just took a bus. Come to me as a child. But we're not children. And there's nothing that we hold in our chests that culturally we represent as a people. Because let me tell you something, when you go to South Door, and you may be offended when you're spending money and a man puts your money on the counter, and then he's talking about you to his man in a language you don't understand. But let me say something about this man. I respect him. I respect him. You know why I respect him? Because he has clarity. He has clarity about the fact that you're a guest in his yard. So if you're a guest in his yard, how should he treat you? Like you're supposed to stay and come in and feel comfortable and do whatever the hell you want to do? No. No, there are ramifications for you playing the fool. Because I have a shop. You know what happens when you come in my shop and you act the fool? Boom! This ain't a playground, you know. And then they smell the room. See the temperature change. You kind of cold. Now the truth don't have no temperature, baby. Final no sense. Your guest. It's not a playground. It's a business. It's where I make my money. It's how I feed my family. So now you're aware. See, Mr. Bade, he's feeding his family. He don't give a damn about you. But you know where you're useful? Because you're malleable. Look at this video. Has everyone seen the video of this European man who's gone to Tower Hamlets and he's swearing after children? They breed like rats. Okay. It's disgusting. And as a man, I'm mortified and disgusted. And I have empathy for the upset in Tower Hamlets. But now as a pragmatist, and now I raise one finger. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because when our parents and grandparents were being deported last year, which was merely a bank robbery, do not get it twisted. Remember, I told you, our taxation paid our former owners and remunerated them. Our time done. But you know what these people have got post 60, 65? Pensions. So what happened if you're not a citizen? You got a weekly pension. Where's that gone? It's called a bank robbery. I told you there are men in rooms who are a lot more mercenary than you, but not me. Not me. I wouldn't raise one finger. But my brothers and sisters in Tower Hamlets have my empathy because no organization came out by our side. And do you know what others did? They laughed. And what are these bags? The Golgana bags? You know what they call them? Removal vans. When they see us getting off planes. So it's funny that our parents and grandparents who spent their whole life here working to build were humiliated. And the hope was they died before any case is resolved. So knowing that, have clarity about who you got to serve. But there's a reason I mentioned Tower Hamlets, because I belong to over 100 WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and institutional WhatsApp groups. And there was a group, I won't name it, but all the empathy was there. We got to come out in solidarity. So then there's little old me. Oh, that was disgusting. That man should be dealt with. But not by me, baby. And I don't believe by us. And this comradeship that you're seeking to create seems more organized than anything I've witnessed in the last 2 years. And I'm a highly experienced man. And I speak to a lot of people. And I know what's going on in a lot of rooms. So I questioned it as a man. And the responses came back, we have to build unity. So I'm not too smart. So I asked myself, what question should you ask? Well, because I'm a very basic guy. And I believe that the highest form of intelligence is base. The lion eats the antelope, not because he's jealous, not because he's cute, because like me before I came in this room, his belly was rumbling. I eat that. Very basic. So we as a people now have to be very basic and strip it right back to basics. You want to hear a basic question? So, let's unity attack. Sounds fantastic. So here's my basic question as a layperson. What's in it for me? And Mr. Patel might say, brother, I'm your brother? I can come around on Christmas Day? Go look your mother and father. We must have clarity about serving our community. What our community need is socio-economic organization. So 3 PACs, 3 institutions are being incorporated. One is a political PAC. What is the political PAC? The political PAC weaponizes our votes at a national level. That is called a super PAC. That super PAC is about having representatives in every one of the 33 London boroughs and the counties. Those who have been working in isolation as advocates now work as a fist, connected by technology. Then we can meet as frequently as we like, because we have conference calls going across the land. Now we have one agenda, not one party. See, if you come in my house, I don't care what trainers you're wearing. I care that when you take them off and land them outside, your foot doesn't tink when you come in my living room. So we don't care about your brand. We're voting within our interests. So every one of those boroughs might be voting differently. But what we're doing is not advising as a PAC. You see, we create the messages based on donations from our businesses, which are offsettable against taxation, to do what? Instruct you per borough who to vote for within your interests. So everybody speaks about the most successful community who are the tiniest minority in this country. And they are 300,000. So we know power is not numeric. If power is not numeric, what is power? So if you've got 10 guys who are feeble-minded, and I come in a room very sharp, and they've all got a tenner, and I know how to take the tenner away from them, what are these 10 men not that I am? Organized. So once you understand that we're out-organized, you put the policies, procedures, balances, measures, and checks in place to correct it. No European is coming for you. Oh, do you know what ADPAC will do? The African Caribbean Political Action Committee. Well, one, it will liaise with brothers and sisters in the States. And then we join as a war of attrition, African states, because we're Africans. Black doesn't mean anything, it only means something in the shower, remember? Okay, so if black doesn't mean anything, Africa is a continent. There are nations who become members. And then we can send our trainee brothers and sisters and politicians on secondments for most effective practice, and also for trade links. So when I use the term Blacksit, people would like to put it down to this, look, it's not cute. It's very formal. It enables you to work outside of their system. And since the pack is a trust, it's outside of UK legislation. So you can't tell me about raising money, who I can back and what I can do. Same thing I would tell Mr. Smith, it's the same thing we tell Mr. Patel. Go look your mother and father. Okay. So, what is power? Power is autonomy and options. How do you create options? You create options by creating an economy. If you are in a job which pays the sum total of your bills, and your boss says you're staying an hour and you're not getting paid, you have no options. Okay. So then you have a brethren who also has a shop, and he said, I'm going to pay you on the weekend. Well, you know what you got now? Options. Because your economy has grown. You see, our options come from economics. Now, you have to pay tax as an individual. You have to pay tax as a business. You can't keep it. So you can donate as much as you want as a business, and you can donate that portion from your job, and you won't feel it. But do you know what it will do? It will serve your people, your nation, your institutions, and your interests, which grow your options. Because now we've funded this school next to us, we can take our children out of here. And because we are constituting my sister Kay Johnston's educational curriculum as a formal curriculum in trust, we will now deliver this entrepreneurial African curriculum as we see fit in not only our schools here, but where we do the licensing with member states internationally, and it's monetized. So now we have options, and you can deliver code from a curriculum where you have children. Just imagine, this is an assembly. This is an assembly of 500 children, just like when we sat down with Europeans. And the mantra within this assembly every morning, I am my brother's keeper and my sister's protector. From preschool, 3 years old, all the way to 17. And then your head looks at you. Touch one. Touch all. You play the children. Touch one.
Touch all.
That guy. And I throw a little wackless. We do this every day, incidentally, in assembly. So I'm ahead. Touch one.
Touch all.
Touch one.
Touch all.
Sleeping people. You know one thing I love about black people? Killed, because we need numbers. You see, last month when there was like 200 in it was beautiful because everybody could hide like we work in the civil service. See? No, what's up? Touch one. Touch one. Wait. You see what that does in your chest? You see, if I did that 10 times, you get like a lightheaded. The euphoria. It's revolutionary because you can't say every morning between 3 and 17 and my brother's keeper, and my sister's protector, and be hollering touch one, touch all, and not think as a nation, with no interference from Europeans, Bangladeshis, other agendas, no interference. Africa for Africans. When you have Africa for Africans, you feel powerful, right? You see, no matter there's 50, you feel like 50,000. We are the strongest, most resilient people on this planet, which is why we're the most interfered with people on this planet. You cannot take a shank at 18 and stab your brother if you've been saying that for 15 years. So if you want to know what the health policy is, we're going to do the public health approach. Well, man, we're African people. Make it simple. Okay, you want to make a simple process and concept sound complicated, so we can't go for the money. Do you want to know what the public health approach is? Early intervention. What is early intervention? It's rites of passage, it's the correct education and supplementary school, which is totally cultural. And we are the only people capable of delivering it. No European can deliver that to us. So, once you have clarity about the public health approach, which is early intervention, we're clear. We can do it. Now you need to give us the money to deliver it. And we have the vehicles, which are the trusts and charities. And as I say that, my brother and partner, Ghana man, Nana Ajiman, is at the back collecting donations for Access UK, working with young people. We'll do that. We're going to have a break in 2 seconds. But I have to acknowledge this general, because you see, we talk about personal politic and we talk about consistency. I'm going to tell a story, and I need you not to cry, because you need to be able to count the money afterwards. My brother set up Access UK after the riots, and because these things are capital intensive, he sold one of his homes to fund it. Now generals have joined him, and very important things are happening in rooms to give our children curriculums before this curriculum was on the table. And we have a program starting in Tottenham within the next few months. So understand that we exist within our community and are doing. You could have found this gentleman and our other colleagues in Parliament, in the Mayor's office, you name any institution around this land. We have been there. We exist. Things are happening, we are moving. But it's a choice. So a man or a woman is responsible for themselves. Look in the mirror. I have been robbed. Do you know what I did? I know that. Why you put yourself in that position? Did I put myself in the position again? I didn't think it was acceptable. And I come from a place, good or bad, we don't call police.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. But I'm going to tell you why. You see, you think this is a thing of criminals, and there was a period in my younger life I was a petty criminal. But it is more historic than that. When we were on plantations, we plan and plot to escape. The informer is the one that destroyed our master plan. No matter we were numerically more than the overseers, they were more organized, and we were mentally and spiritually broken. There is a lion spirit that can beat any environment or any circumstance, but they are a tiny minority. They are the organizers. They are your Nat Turners. But Stevens largely outnumber. That is the history of why we don't inform. Understand, the history of us having slang, which is looked down upon, is because our language was stolen. So we have to have a different lens for these things. Your lens must be an African lens, not a European lens that looks down on African people, which is easy. even after I put on a dashiki, if my mindset is of indoctrination, it doesn't matter what I display externally. As I come in a room, dress like I dress, speak like I speak, people have a perception that I have a European woman and I do this and do that. No matter, go look your mother and father. What is of all importance is what you do. And when you tell me you know, I tell you, knowing is doing. So if you're not do it, you're not sweet FA. And I don't care if we acknowledge it today, tomorrow, we know. We're gonna break for 10 minutes. Everybody have some drink at the back. There's a lovely lady with some food. There are black dolls. There is international travel and books at the back. People, please, 10 minutes. Thank you.